You're listening to Love Talk Live with the relationship expert, Jaime Bronstein, only on LA Talk Radio.
Welcome to Love Talk Live. Today I have with me in studio some really amazing people. They're all therapists, and they made a documentary called Living Love That Lasts. So I will introduce all of them. This is in order, not necessarily how they're sitting, but alphabetically to make it fair. Nancy Gardner, raise your hand.
That would be me.
Sandra Goldstein.
That's me.
Robert Ogner, obviously. And Susan Thaw. So welcome to the show. We have so many questions. I said to them before that they might need to come back because with the questions and then the questions about the questions, you know, there's just going to be some organic material that's going to come up. And so let's just dive right in. And actually, before we dive in, so this documentary, is this available for people to see yet?
In about a week, it'll be available for people to see. I'll give you information about how they can find it.
Okay, perfect. And this documentary is about couples who have all been married for over 25 years, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was their criteria for this documentary. Okay, so first of all, how did you guys come up with this concept to do this documentary?
About 15 years ago, Susan Thaw and I were working with couples who had been married a long time, and we became curious about what keeps these couples together. And we decided to start studying this by first interviewing them on video and filming them, and we began to be just fascinated by the differences, how couples relate to each other, how they make things work. And it was so exciting that we began to present this at professional meetings over a period of about 8 years. And we had about 25 people involved. Felt that wasn't really a great number of people. And later we joined with Nancy and Robert and others, and we expanded our pool of people so that when you see our documentary, this will be out of a pool of about 50 people. And it's been very exciting to see these couples and talk with them and learn about what's kept them together and how they have been in love for many, many years. Susan?
Sandra and I were participants in a study group, and that was where it actually began because we were studying attachment and connection. And both of us had long marriages, so we began to engage in the conversation about why was it that some marriages were able to survive and endure and others were not. And we hope we've gotten some of the kernels of that in this video that we're hoping you will see.
So so you have all these couples. How did you decide, because you couldn't have all of them in the film, I'm guessing. How did you decide which ones would actually be in the film?
Part of it was very practical, but some of the films that Susan and I made were not of great quality, so we really couldn't have used them in a film. So that eliminated those couples right away. Thanks to Robert here, we were able to film couples in a very professional way. And Robert, you could speak more to that.
My son is a filmer and an editor. He's been working on television shows, and so we hired him to film the final 6 interviews and to film at a professional level. And it was the last 6, so the last 6 we selected are the 6 that are in the movie.
But a big part of our criteria for the 6 were we wanted a diverse sample of couples. So we wanted to have couples from different ethnicities, and we wanted at least one same-sex couple. So in our 6, we wanted to make sure that was a representative sample. So that was a huge part of what we were thinking about when we were recruiting couples, in addition to couples who had been married for at least 25 years and who or together, because same-sex couples were not married for that long because it wasn't legal 25 years ago.
Right.
So that was a big part of our criteria too.
And then I know once you guys watch the film, you'll see that at the end, you guys show kind of outtakes of some of the other couples. So it's great that you guys were able to do that.
Right. We picked some prime clips where the couples from the older interviews had some good things to say, things we wished we could have included, so we included them that way.
Well, one of the things that I was so impressed with, you said that you eventually did use more of a professional video camera, and you got your son is professional to do editing. This film is really, really well done. I mean, but we all had lunch, and I was telling you guys this, and it was almost like you guys were surprised or something, but it truly is so beautiful. And
Thank you,
the way that the editing and how it all turned out, and the messages, and how it all flowed, it was just, it's so beautiful.
It was complicated to edit it because to make a storyline out of all those interviews and to have some flow, you can't actually do it like, now we're going to talk about this and now we're going to talk about that, because people don't speak that way about their relationship. They associate this way, they jump that way, they have a thought, they pause, they try to have a memory. And so Levi had all the clips labeled, every clip from all the interviews, they were about an hour and 45 minutes each. So he took each clip, put them by theme that we had told him to we pointed to the clips that had the theme, but then he took all those clips and then he tried to make some arc out of that. He did a pretty good job. I was impressed.
We were impressed.
It was hard to make it flow.
Really amazing.
This had many iterations because we originally started out and tried to make it more, we were thinking of it not as a research project, but we did have meetings and we discussed themes that we were trying to do, and we came up with various criteria. And in the end, after a long time, it became much clearer that that was not going to work. And this was all during the process, because we began the second go-around. We began the first shootings, Sandra and I, probably in 2005, and I think we began to do the second ones around 2013. And that was, so there was a number of years in between, and there were a lot of other people that were involved in this project other than the four of us, who were involved with the ideas, wanted to talk about it. This actually came after a first project that we did as an organization, because we're part of a much larger organization. Maybe Nancy, you want to explain it?
Oh, we're part of something called the LA Center for EFT. EFT stands for Emotionally Focused Therapy. So we're all therapists in that particular method of therapy, and that's been generally a method of therapy for couples, and recently it's expanding to families and individuals also.
Do you want to give a brief description of what EFT is?
I'll try. EFT is it's a kind of therapy that's based on attachment theory. So our general, as you can see from this video that we did, we're interested in attachment and adult attachment. So John Bowlby, who's the father of attachment theory, said, from cradle till grave, we need to know that we have that we're special to at least one other person. So EFT is based on attachment theory, and the emotionally focused part of it is that when we work with couples, we try to get to attachment emotions and underlying primary emotions and attachment needs. Couples tend to fight on the surface about things like the dishes and the cooking and things like that, and often underneath that there's some understandings or misunderstandings about who feels cared about and who feels like they're important and that they matter. And so we try to work with couples trying to get to some of those underlying emotional concerns and try to help couples talk about those and talk from a place of vulnerability as opposed to a place of aggression and attack and defend. So that's sort of a basic look at what kind of work we do.
I love it, yeah. And if there's any couples out there, any people that want to start doing this therapy, we'll give all your information out at the end, and they can.
And we have a center for EFT in LA, and we have a website and a directory of other therapists in LA who do EFT. We have quite a community. When
people Google it, they should Google emotionally focused therapy, not EFT, because there is another therapy model
there is
that took those letters.
It has something to do with tapping.
It's called,
Yeah.
So if you Google emotionally focused therapy.
Right.
What's really interesting is that we're part of an international organization that is worldwide. So all over the world, there are therapists that are following the same model that was derived early on from Sue Johnson, and it's in Toronto, now I guess in Vancouver, the center, but it is iceeft.org. And so all over the world, people in many, many, many countries, more than I can imagine, are practicing EFT, working with couples, now individuals and families.
So people can Google International Center for EFT. It's in Ottawa.
Ottawa,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
So the four of us are part of a larger group, a larger team who put this film together, and all of the people on the team are members of the LAC EFT group. We were originally the founding board members of that, and we began to talk together about projects that would be interesting and fun to do. And we did first one called Caught in the Struggle, and maybe one of you can talk more about that because you were in it.
We were all in it.
We were all in it.
Yeah, actually, we were all in it. Yeah. Anyway, that was our first big project. And from that, we began to see that we could work together and develop a really good film. And our true passion was to develop a film about couples and couples that have stayed together and the attachment theory that is beneath that ability to stay together.
So, what is your intention for the film in general? What is your intention? What do you want people to get out of watching the film?
You've always said that well. You want to name it, Susan?
Well, I think over the years since I've been doing couple work, relational work, I've come to the conclusion many people have not seen secure attachments or working relationships between their family members. And it was stunning to me how many really didn't have any sense of it, only from movies or TV, and oftentimes not realistic. And so the intention was to provide real examples of people who live, love, and endure, and how they do it. So this is remarkable in that it's very real. This is not honey-coated or in any way. These are people that live, and you will see examples in there of where they bump up against each other, which is very important because that's part of what happens in life. But it shows how there is repair that goes on. And the beauty of the way this is done is that the couples are, providing the background, but the narration, which ties everything together, provides a way of understanding the beauty of connection that surpasses the particular interviews, which to me is the stunning piece about this documentary.
And we're hopeful that young people who watch this film will learn from it and get some ideas about how to make their relationships endure over time. And we included a young couple in the film, and they really illustrate a lot of the beginning struggles that a young couple can have, and yet they provide a lot of hope of how to deal with them. So they're a very important part of the film too. It's the 6 older couples who've been together 50 years and the young couple just starting their relationship and what they're working out together.
Well, I do want to talk about that young couple and how, because it's a very cool part of the film. Because they're nonverbal, they don't speak. They speak in real life. They don't. They're not nonverbal.
They're real people. Yeah.
It's a very creative way. They don't speak in the film, and then it was very creative. But I like that you guys were bringing up that these aren't perfect couples because. So I'm making a documentary, and people, when I tell them about it, they say, oh, so it's going to be just all those perfect couples, whatever. I'm never going to have a relationship like that. And I explain, no, these aren't people that are going to Hawaii every day eating bonbons, and have no problems. That's not and there are no perfect couples anyway. These are real couples, like you're saying, that they have that deep connection, and they do have issues, and how do they get through it? So what have you guys found from this film, from your life, whatever, what have you found is different between these couples that have it and other couples that don't get through things because they don't have that connection?
So much. Well, that's a great question.
I think a big
Yeah.
one is fun and play
Mhm.
and enjoyment
Mhm.
and sense of humor, and that lightens things for the couples and allows them to make serious things lighter and more bearable, and just gives them fun together. I think that's a big essential component.
Yeah.
Love it.
Every
Sure
one
you
of
have
our
other-
6 couples
yeah.
said that. Every one of our
Yes,
6
yes.
couples said that something about
Right.
humor,
Yes.
that was an important part.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And in the narration, one of the narrators says that these couples have learned from gutting it out, hanging in there, and finding their way through. And it's true in all these couples. They had all enormous effort to keep reaching toward one another and to find their way through to somewhere where they could understand each other. And they're not perfect, but their humanity is like all of ours and
Yes.
beautiful, and you can feel how much depth of acceptance they've achieved by doing that.
And they want to work it out because they have that deep connection.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
One of the big scenes in there is the scene of the couple walking together separately, and then they come back together. And I know for me personally that image has really stayed in my mind so often, because I thought it was a beautiful way of exemplifying how the separateness is always there, but that there is a way of coming back together. And there's an emphasis also on repair, on being able to come back and find a way to mend and change things that have happened. And couples that are in this position tend to be people in one way or another who know how to do that. They may have a different time frame. Some people take longer, but there is a true commitment to that as something that is really important. And that, to me, is one of the main differences. The idea that you can repair something even when there's been some kind of breach, which in partnership there is.
One of our couples said that the most important thing to him was to find a woman, love her, and then stick like glue. And it's a very important phrase in our film, and I think it's very true because it really illustrates in a visual way a kind of true commitment that is made from the beginning.
And that was a theme too. Most of our couples
Yeah,
talked
it
about
was.
commitment and sticking
Right,
with it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Or were you going to say something?
No,
You took a breath.
Go ahead.
we also talked about things that people have been through, illnesses. I mean, one of our questions was, what have been your challenges? What have been the low points? And everyone there was no one who said, we just go to Hawaii and eat bonbons and we've never had a
Yeah.
low point, and not one
No low
couple said
points.
that.
Never fought.
Yeah. So they took that question seriously and talked about low points. And one couple talked about having lost a great deal of money by one person's decisions and how they handled that as a couple. Other people talked about illnesses and how they got through those, challenges with their children, all kinds of challenges. So that was a really important piece.
It was.
What kinds of challenges have you been through, and how did you get through them?
Yeah.
And also conflict in general. How do you handle conflict, and have you had conflict? Of course, everyone said they had, and some people said. I thought one of the things I learned was some people said the conflict seemed to sort of over years. They seem to settle out a bit, like one couple said, well, we're too old to fight now, I don't know if it's age that does it, but there's something
don't
about
have the
in a
energy to fight.
long-term relationship where you kind of, there's some more acceptance, there's some more, that's one of the things that I learned from these couples, is more acceptance and more kind of settling into the conflicts aren't as intense, or there's not as much, invested in getting your way, and there's like the couple becomes the more important. It becomes more important to be, that old phrase, would you rather be right or married? That it's more important to work it out.
Yeah.
So than it is to be right or to have your way.
one of the narration is really beautiful. The narration is worth the price of admission. It's really quite beautiful. And one of the narrators in the narration says something like, we've come through the storm so many times that we know what's going to happen. So we don't have to be as alarmed when we're jolted into experiences of disconnection. We've been here. We know how to find our way back. And so, that speaks to what happens to couples who hang in there over a lifetime, is they know how to find their way back.
Then my question that's coming to me in general is, because I would think that eventually you would learn how to resolve this issue and see if it's, this person likes to handle it this way and this one handles it this way. Is there a compromise or just an understanding? So that eventually, after it happens 50 times or 20 times, there will be a place where you can kind of put the kibosh on that one, and then there will be the next one. So do you feel like there are things that never die, like that just keep coming up forever?
Yes.
Sometimes they do keep coming up forever.
But then you have a sense of humor
what
about it
happens
eventually.
is
Right.
you can laugh about
Yeah,
it.
okay, good.
That's a big difference. Yeah.
Or
Because
tease
the
each
big
other about it,
thing-
or
Or
the
tease,
intensity about it is
right,
the
right.
same over
Yeah.
time.
You can feel teasing energies, irritations in some
Yeah.
of the
Yes,
conversations. But then it's obvious that they're fine. They're connected in the next beat.
They're not as emotionally triggered.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
One, I won't say which couple, but one of the couples had never spoken of their relationship before the interview.
Ever.
And
I think I know which one, yes.
and none of these couples were in therapeutic processes at all. They weren't therapy clients. They're just people who found their way. And the couple who'd never spoken of their relationship actually got an opportunity to say things to each other that they hadn't said to one another. They had little energies, little
Things.
pieces of humor.
Yeah.
But they were kind of delighted with each other, even while that was happening. Yeah.
Also, one of you guys said, you brought up vulnerability. I think it's so great because it's, especially since they haven't been in therapy, to give these couples an opportunity to be vulnerable. And then for people that watch this, to see other people being vulnerable, because when we are vulnerable, that's how we connect. And we are relatable. So the viewers will be able to see these couples being vulnerable and being real and human, and then they're relatable, and a viewer can say, okay, well, I can have that also.
Right.
Yeah.
And the neat thing about these couples is that, so we do that kind of thing therapeutically. You started this asking us what we do as therapists. So we do that when couples are in trouble and in our offices and looking for help. But these are couples who were not looking for help and who have fostered a relationship that has a lot of vulnerability in it. So we didn't do anything. We just heard their stories. We asked them questions and we wanted to know about them and we wanted to learn from them. But we weren't intervening therapeutically with them. They were
Right.
just
Yeah.
there telling us about their vulnerabilities and how they've gotten through their struggles over time and how they talk and how they are there for each other in ways that help them be more vulnerable. I mean, you can be more vulnerable if you feel like your partner's there for you.
Yes, yes.
And these are people who definitely feel their partners are there for them and will continue to be there for them.
And we, as a group, were very grateful to these couples
Yeah.
who gave their time
Yeah.
and let us into their
Right.
homes
Right.
and into parks where they were filmed in a more casual way. It was extraordinary, and we are very grateful for all that they did to allow this film to be made.
Yes.
So one of my questions for you is, from doing this, did you learn more about your own relationship? Were there any aha moments as you were interviewing couples that made you then go home and talk to your spouse and say, this is interesting, I realized this today, or anything? Yeah. Oh, and you don't have to talk about, if you don't want to.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
Just if anybody had an awareness.
Well, I'd say one thing, as I mentioned that image of the couple that is in the video, and I think something that's really the whole idea of how much I affect the people around me is something that, as I've been in this field as long as I have, no matter what, it increasingly becomes aware to me, moment to moment, my effect upon the people I care about, the people I work with. And I just took that out of this, it heightened it, and it's there all the time. So it's in every action. It doesn't, how you come home, how you engage, how you leave, what you say. You're affecting the people around you, your mate and anybody else you live with. And I was struck by the enormity of that. And one of the things is it doesn't have to be perfect. And to me, it's the humanness of our interaction, which is something that is really important to me because I don't believe in perfect. And so this piece to me speaks to that, and that's what I'm so grateful.
I wouldn't say that I learned anything in those interviews that I could take from my own relationship. I think when I'm doing therapy, I'm constantly learning something that I can take to reflect on in my own relationship. But similar to what Susan's saying, it was very moving to just feel the variety of the ways people make it work. That is not about therapy. It's about hanging in there, finding some way to accept one another and to show yourself to one another. First scene in the movie is, we really loved the first scene. We got really lucky because there was a moment of repair right in the middle of the interview. And it was heartening for me to just realize how much that can happen in an everyday way. It was really... So.
Yeah, that moment was really an important one. Robert and I were the interviewers there. And the couple talked about, one of our questions was, how'd you get together? What was your early relationship like? And they were talking about their early relationship, and it wasn't easy for them. They were talking about this 40 years later, and they're, this is a couple where he also says, when she walks by me, I can't take my hands off. I can't keep from touching her. My hands are all over her, or something like that.
And she's like, "Oh, I love
it."
Yeah, it's so cute.
Lovely.
So
So you see that couple, but then they were talking also about how the beginnings were of their relationship that was really hard, and they talked about it with emotion, and he talked about it in a more understanding way than she had heard him ever talk about it before.
I remember
and that happened in the interview, and I'm getting chills just remembering the moment.
And she broke
It was a
into
very,
tears.
very
So
poignant
beautiful.
moment of 40 years later when you look back and you say, oh, I get that now, and I understand something more about what you were experiencing then.
And what I
That
didn't
was
get,
just
what I
beautiful.
didn't get then,
Right.
didn't understand.
I didn't understand. And he was willing to say that, and she was deeply touched by that. And I just love that couple forever now, just because they were able to do that. Right?
On
It was-
camera.
Yeah.
It was a great way for the film to start.
Yeah.
So my parents have been married for almost 50 years,
Wow.
and they
Impressive.
said, and they have such a beautiful relationship. It's so inspirational. And I remember one day they were telling me, this was something silly, but that my mom learned that my dad could only wink with one eye. He can only do one eye. So, but I'm extrapolating that too, because there are a lot more things that they've
to
learned
learn.
about each other.
Yes.
The point is
Yeah.
that they've said that they are still learning
Yes.
things about
Right.
each other.
Right.
And that is a good match.
That is
Right.
good.
You know, like
That is good.
couples get to
Yeah.
this place where they're like, I've learned everything. Like,
Right.
there's not really
Right.
anything more.
Right.
And that shows that they have a deep connection and a
Right.
deep bond and a
Right.
deep loving and
Right.
wanting desire to be together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well
Yeah.
said.
Nice.
That's neat. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think young couples get concerned about is how can we keep our relationship alive, and like what you're talking about, your parents are able to do. They're still learning. That I think people also worry about how can we keep it sexually alive. Will we get tired of, people make jokes about, oh, good move, you're going to have sex with the same person for the rest of your life now. How do you keep a sexual relationship alive, and how do you keep closeness alive, and how do you keep interest alive? And I think that's one of the major questions about long-term relationships.
And what have you guys found? I've found, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah.
And then
No.
feel free to go ahead. So one of the things that I found is new experiences, not doing the same thing all the
Right.
time, maybe being a little spontaneous in the bedroom,
Right.
to address that.
Yes.
But I really think that having new experiences together and not doing the same thing every day can keep it alive, right?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
And having fun, the fun
Right.
aspect.
For
Right.
sure.
Yeah. There was
Right.
one movie, and I'm forgetting what it was, but the whole point of it was for the boyfriend to have sex, he needed to have foreplay in the kitchen doing dishes. So there's a
Wait,
little
that was
bit
one
of
of the
that,
couples
little
you
bit of that.
interviewed?
No, I saw this in a movie.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, I think it's true. Yeah.
It seems like it seems to me, I think you'll all agree on this, it's the degree of emotional openness to your partner and to yourself when couples are together is what makes lovemaking continue to be really a good thing. I don't think I think the deeper variety that comes out of experiencing one another differently is where that part of our relationships stay vital. That's the way I think.
Experiencing each other differently.
Yeah.
Does that mean, are you saying that people are, because you grow together, you're growing as you get older, you're reinventing yourselves, or that's not what you're saying?
I think we find different parts of ourselves, of each other, in surprising ways. I think couples that remain really happy that way, they still find themselves in new, they find different aspects of themselves in
That's what it
lovemaking.
is. Aspects.
Different aspects of themselves and different aspects of their partner.
Do you
by
have
being
an
the-
example? Because I would love to make this more concrete.
I could make it concrete in terms of my own experience, but I would be shy to name that.
Okay, I understand. We could pretend it's
But-
his friend Bob. Oh, you are Bob. His friend Alex. Okay.
But we can't do that now.
All right.
People won't fall for it.
Jamie, but I also think it's appreciating, like, as people age, I think there's a reluctance, or there can be a kind of not even thinking about these things. And what I've noticed in my own life, I mean, you can have fun and be interested and enhance your mate's attraction by allowing and encouraging them to see themselves in ways that are appealing. So, and I think that makes all the difference in the world. If you feel that you're being seen and that there's pleasure in that,
Yes.
that to me is really important, not just for both all partners. And so I see that as something that was addressed by a couple of different people in the film, and I know in my practice that's a big deal. That's
Being seen, being heard is attractive.
and feeling
Yes.
the sense that in the eyes that there is a sense of interest and kind
pleasure,
of and
and
wonder
pleasure.
and whatever
Intrigue,
in it can be whatever it is between the people that are doing that, but there is an awareness of that, and that has no age bounds. Nothing. It does not have to. And so that to me is something that if it comes through
Yeah.
in this film, I hope it does, but it certainly is important to me. It's
Yeah.
something that I value and really
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways that's, if not either equally or more important than novelty, because a lot of people talk about how do you keep sex interesting, and part of it is novelty, right? But sex is so much deeper than that, like, new experiences and keeping something novel and doing something different. It's also about finding a way to connect and be important to each other and feel appreciated and loved and cared for. And kind of a physical way of demonstrating that. So novelty isn't the key there. It's more what you were talking about, feeling seen and appreciated and loved and treated specially.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps things alive.
I'm thinking of one example that I could share.
Yeah.
Okay. We got an example.
But
All
it's
right.
but it won't be what you think. So
It's okay.
my wife and I can bust into the biggest laughter in the middle of making love.
I love it.
There's no part of our experience that's left out. So
Is it?
we say funny things, or something comes up, or we love making turns into conversation, and then it turns into something that we're thinking about, and then it comes back into some aspect of. It's all lovemaking as far as we're concerned, and she'll say she's funny. She pokes me in a funny way, and we will just crack
Like,
up.
will you be having sex and then you're like, did we check the mail today?
Not like
Or did you
that.
buy
No.
milk?
No, it has more to do. It has more to
There's
do
cracks
with.
in the ceiling.
It has more to do with the ways we know each other.
The way you wet each other?
The ways we know each other.
Oh.
It's the way we're familiar with each other. We have things to laugh about.
Because you have the history.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Because
That's
Right.
we're open to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
It just felt like laughter's part of our novelty.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Right.
mhm.
Yeah. Right. And you're fun.
And we're
Yeah,
funny. Yeah, we're
yeah.
fun.
Yes.
When I was dating my husband in graduate school, I was talking to one of my friends, and I said, "I'm not sure he's the one." And I said, "But he does make me laugh all the time." And she said, "That's so important." She says, "That will last." And she was right. That lasted.
The laughter.
The
yes.
laughter. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I think
He's still a funny guy to this day.
He is.
Very funny.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it doesn't have to be somebody who's a slapstick comedian. This is
no.
there's something that happens between two people, this energy, and when it's there, it might not even be funny to anybody else, but it's funny, laughing together, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I was aware there were other questions you wanted to get to, and I didn't know if we got stuck on this. I'm just thinking about the.
I have one more question about, and then we're going to get back to this. So I have been told about the new experiences. So new experiences do keep relationships alive, but in the sexual realm, what you're saying is you don't have to have new things all the time. That's just about love. But growing together and bonding, new experiences like going on a vacation and learning and taking a class,
Sure.
those
Definitely.
new experiences
Right.
do help
Right.
keep the relationship
For
alive
sure.
also.
Definitely do.
Right.
So I want to make that clear.
And there's nothing wrong with novelty in sex either. But I didn't mean to say there's nothing. You don't want novelty. I was just thinking that's not the whole thing.
Mhm.
We'll put a website up
Yeah.
for some stores that people can get stuff at. Okay, so yes, we have a few more questions. I'm trying to think because we've kind of gone through a lot of this. Let's see. Did we go over kind of the common threads? Laughter, fun, anything else that you feel like are the common threads?
Being there for each other in crisis, that was a strong thread. Every couple spoke of their partner being there for them when there was trouble. Showing up,
Support.
support, being there,
Yeah.
being available.
Right. Commitment we talked about.
Right. We did. Capacity to forgive and forget.
Yes.
And that's very important.
That's good.
One of the women in the interviews said, the key to a good marriage is a short memory. I think that's true. There's some truth to that. Yeah. Yeah. Being
Well-
able to have something happen, the next day is gone.
A lot of women have babies because there's something called pregnancy brain, and I experienced it, and my short-term memory has been, I was affected by the pregnancy brain and the mama brain also.
Well, there's a mama brain too.
Yeah, the mama brain.
And then there's the menopause
There's a wife
brain,
brain.
and
So-
there's the old people's brain. There's all,
So women,
yeah.
we're lucky. We don't remember. We don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did want to address the nonverbal verbal couple. So there's a couple. You guys can explain this couple in the film, why you brought them in, what they symbolize, because it is so beautiful the way that you worked it in.
So the main reason we have, there's several segments of a young couple around 30 years old, and we see them in little moments of connection or disconnection. And the main reason we brought them in was it felt like we needed to have something more immediately evocative of struggle, since the master couples, as we sometimes refer to them, or the resilient couples, they're remembering trouble, but they're not in the midst of trouble. So we wanted something that we could evoke a juxtaposition, and we thought it would be handy to have it be a young couple, since the film, we are in our mission to inspire and to evoke conversation. Young couples will need that most. So we wove these young couple clips throughout, and they if we said they symbolize something, they symbolize the experience of struggle in the middle of disconnection.
Yes.
And in our first iteration of the film, we tried this with animation. I had the idea that if we made the couple iconic rather than specific, people would be able to identify more. There's a reality to that. But no one on the team liked the
No one
animation.
liked it. Sorry.
was
So,
awful.
yes,
It was bad.
It was bad.
Got nixed.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But then you also showed
No,
that the couples. Go on.
I'm sorry. I was going to say one more thing. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
They're nonverbal only because of the limitations of the film crew, my son and his filming partner, and my son's the editor, and me, our limitations on our capacity to direct. And we didn't use professional actors, so we thought it would be simpler to be evocative in a nonverbal way than with
And
if
it
we'd had a script. It wouldn't have worked. It would have been harder for the people. They were great. The young
were
couple's
really good,
great.
yeah.
They did great. But
And
it
they
was
were
easier.
a real young couple.
They're a
They're
really
really
young couple.
young
They're
couple.
friends of my son.
Right.
They did great, but it would have been harder if there had been lines,
Yeah.
and harder. I wouldn't have had any idea how to direct the lines.
But even if you had the greatest director in the world, I feel like this works so
Yeah.
It did
beautifully.
work.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
It,
really
also
does.
gave a
Yeah.
place for the narration to come in on
That's true.
top of some of those scenes.
Yeah.
So
What I liked about the young couple was there are many subtle things that happen. They're in the car, he turns on the radio, she doesn't like the station, she turns a different channel, he knocks her hand aside, and she looks up at him and kind of irritated. Just very subtle things like that.
yeah, they compete
And
for
they
the
compete
radio
for the radio.
dial.
Well, and the dish
And the-
scene.
And then, oh yes, she comes home and the dishes are all over, dirty dishes everywhere, and her husband's on the couch watching football. And she comes in and she's disgusted, just has a look of disgust on her face. And another, which is very subtle, they were in a restaurant and a waiter comes up to serve them, and she puts out her hand to take the check, and she holds his arm like so, and then pulls it away, and the husband looks and he's very jealous. Didn't like that. So little subtle things, and if you're aware of
So
these things,
good.
they're just so good. They're so good, so powerful.
So it
Yeah.
they raised the questions, and we did this deliberately. Like, so how do you get through that kind of stuff? That can be very intense. Early on, maybe you figure out what you're going to do about dishes or about jealousy or about the radio station. Over time, couples work on that. But when you're just starting out and you experience those conflicts, I think all of us are nervous about, are we going to make it, or what is the next 50 years going to look like?
Sure.
And I can remember not sleeping hardly at all the night before my wedding, trying to figure out was it gonna be the right thing, and were we gonna make it for the next 50 years, and how are we gonna work out this and this and this and this, and it's scary. I mean, marriage is a scary thing, and commitment is a scary thing, and so we wanted to show that, and then give some hope to people that in this world where the divorce rate is very high and where lots of marriages do not make it, we wanted to show marriages that did make it, and have people talk about and tell their stories about it.
I was I was thinking of another value of the silent, the young couple. The way the narrators built the narration was, they watched it and then riffed. They watched segments, and all the young couple segments we had them watch first, and we just turned the film off, and they would just generate all sorts of conversation about what had been evoked in them, and the young couple probably evoked half of their conversation, which we then built back in and wove. It was. People are going to like the narration. Don't you agree?
Oh, it was just so amazing.
And I should give. And the narrators are Jim Furrow, who's a emotionally focused therapy trainer, and Veronica Callos-Lilly, who is also an emotionally focused couple therapy trainer. And they're wonderful people, really smart and human, and they generated great narration, and their voices are beautiful.
They're beautiful
voices.
And I also just wanted to say that the couple, the young couple, you also show them repairing.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not just them fighting.
Right.
And that's the beautiful part about the
Right.
film also.
Right.
That image of the broken vase is something that, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been using it kind of as a metaphor piece in work that I do clinically. It's always there, and that the gold being what comes from the repair, because it's repaired with gold, like a gold vein through the vase is broken, by the way. People should know what I'm speaking about. The young couple, they have an incident where a vase breaks, and so it's symbolic of the repair process that goes on and is necessary in some way between all of us as we relate. So it's a beautiful example.
And there's a piece of Japanese art, I can't tell you who the
Yeah, well,
person
it's-
is, where it's a vase that is mended by, the breaks in the vase are mended by gold. And so the vase became more valuable when it was repaired.
Oh,
It's a Japanese art form.
It's an art, yeah.
And
I
that's
can't remember the
it's-
name of it.
right.
Cricket. I can't remember the name of it.
So we only have about 1 minute
Yeah.
left.
Oh.
But I do want to say one more comment that came to me when you were talking about the night before your wedding. And just really fast, I don't know if this applies to anything, but I just felt like saying it, that as humans, we try to work things out so much in our minds.
Yes.
How? If we can just drop into our heart, and
Yeah.
when we drop into our
Right.
heart and just trust,
Yes,
That's right.
don't worry about the how, it's
Right.
just, then it just,
right, right.
it's beautiful. Okay, so really fast. How do people find this film? When is it coming out? How do people contact you guys? And
Website will come on in a week. It's livinglovethatlasts.com, lowercase.
very easy. And do you want to say your names once again if people want to contact you guys?
I'm Nancy Gardner.
I'm Susan Thaw.
I'm Sandra Goldstein.
I'm Robert Ogner. There's a directory at Los Angeles Center for Emotionally Focused Therapy. There's a directory of therapists, and you can find therapists in that directory. You can also find our names.
Perfect. And as always, you can contact me through my website, therelationshipexpert.com. Thank you guys so much
Thank
for doing
you.
this show
Thank you,
today.
Thanks for having
Thank you,
us.
Jamie,
Thank
for
you.
It was
having
such a
us.
joy
It's
having you
delightful.
guys here.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us. Thank you for having
And
us.
thank you for joining us tonight. Have a lovely evening.
You're listening to Love Talk Live with the relationship expert, Jaime Bronstein, only on LA Talk Radio.